the gap is coming down. 56 seconds now. They're inside a minute behind the group Boonen. It could change on the next sector of cobbles.
Some very good bike handling, just going around that little bit of a chicane there as one of the riders from Bora Argon managed to jump onto the grass and then get himself back comfortably onto the pavé section. This is the moment when you have to use a lot of sacrifices in the team. You can see Trek Segafredo now are doing all of they can just to try and nail it back. Looks like the youngster Jesper Stuyven, winner of Brussels-Kern earlier on, and a former winner of the junior Paris-Roubaix, so he won't be scared of the cobblestones. But all of the work that he's done in the races so far this season have been for one thing: to try and get himself ready to look after Fabian Cancellara in a day like this.
And that's exactly what he's doing now. Cancellara just peeping in our picture to the right there as we move forward again. This is the leading group here. They've gone on to sector 15 they're on now. 51 seconds the gap. Oh, this is the second part of
it's a strange
sector
section.
16, sorry.
It is a very strange section, this, because they categorise it as one section, but it's actually kind of broken in the middle. A little bit of respite with some smooth surface tarmac, but for the total of 3.7 kilometres long and that 4-star rating. Now there's a little bit of collaboration coming from Lotto Jumbo, because Sepp van Mark, well, he's been right up there and climbed onto the podium in this race before, so he will also be starting to think about the fact that he's got the strength and his teammates up alongside him. There's Henrik Hausler you were talking about just before, over on the right-hand side.
Yeah, seems to have refound himself, but look at this Matty Haven here. He's just keeping up the tempo and riding away from the rest of the breakaway just now.
In a couple of days' time, he's going to be 38 years of age, and he still has got that ability to be motivated by races like this. This is a special race, Phil, I have to say. It's one of those races that a lot of riders do not want to ride. They think it's a crazy race. But if you want to ride, if you like riding over the cobblestones, you wake up in the morning of Paris-Roubaix and you know it's a special day.
Well, I tell you, I've never seen Matthew Heyman ride so well. He finished 8th in this event back in 2012. But that's about the best performance he's had as far as a top 10 finish goes. But he's clearly on his day today. He's driving. 52 seconds the gap.
Team Sky have made a very good coup here as well, Phil. There's 4 riders from Team Sky in that group of Tom Bonen and Tony Martin. So when it comes down to a bit of tactical manoeuvring a little bit later on in the race, they are currently in a very nice position. Now, one small order though, they've first got to get across the gap of 52 seconds to that leading group, but they've also got a teammate in that leading group of riders, and that of course is Salvatore Puccio.
Back with the lone leader now on the 114th edition of Paris-Roubaix, Matthew Heyman, former Commonwealth Games road race champion. Got fed up with sitting in the group doing the pace, so he's decided to go up front and do it all by himself here. We've got coursing along sector 16 of 27 sections. Heyman for Orica Greenedge, the Australian #1 team, as he comes off that section of cobblestones there. The gap, they went in with a 54-second advantage. He's managed to draw his back out to 53 seconds here.
It must be tense moments though for Fabian Cancellara, because he made that tactical error last week of allowing some freedom to Peter Sagan. Right now, the man who I suppose you'd have to think has been his arch rival for the last 10 years in Paris-Roubaix, Tom Bonen, he's been giving him a 1-minute advantage at a point like this, so it must be starting to work on his mind. He realises this is his last opportunity, it's his last chance at Paris-Roubaix. That's Bonen sitting there in 3rd position. It looks very calm, it looks pretty relaxed as you can see him riding over those cobblestones, and 2 or 3 positions behind him is Sepp van Mark.
Hard work being done here by Robert Wagner, the German rider on the front. And he's got his team captain up here, Sepp van Mark, as they continue to try and keep ahead and make it hurt if they're going to rejoin from the back. They are closing in, the last time check we got. Are they closing in, and at what cost are they closing in? They're using their teammates now of Trek to try and drive this along. This is Jesper Seidel.
Yeah, but it's starting to come back because that group of Sagan is now at a minute 40, so they're only about 40 seconds, 45 seconds behind the group of Tom Bone, and I think all of a sudden a bit of calm starting to appear. That's Peter Sagan sitting in the middle comfortably with his hand in the middle of the handlebars. The one thing that's always important, people never realise that when you ride over cobbles like this, you mustn't hold the handlebars tight. You've got to almost rest your hand on the handlebars and
almost overshot that one.
I was just telling you how to hold on to the handlebars. Well, you mustn't grab them too hard. You're trying to allow the front wheel to find the most comfortable way of moving over those cobbles. Watch this again. The front wheel actually slipped a little bit. He got his foot out very quickly. Nice control.
Good bike riding, that. So everybody beginning to show signs of panic here, but the gap is closing down. But at what cost to Cancellara's teammates? He's having to use his pawns very early on. 55 seconds the gap to the leaders now. Well, this is quite an inspired group now. There's Bosenhagen, stands out with the Norwegian flag on his back as the champion of his country. Team Sky have got a number of riders up here. Sarah Motins is here as well.
Meanwhile, Matty Hayman at the front of the race is just plodding along as if he was in the breakaway in the Commonwealth Games race that he won a number of years ago. He really is one of the men that's appreciated by his team.
Just watching the group here now. I'm wondering 1:30. Now this breakaway did form on the section of Pavé during an amazing pile-up of riders in the centre of the field, many of them taking to run across the fields, but in no way, I don't believe, did Etix take advantage of that fall. They were riding at the front at the time, and I can't imagine how Cancellara and Sagan were in the position they were in when they came off that sector of cobblestones. They really shouldn't have been where they were. They were delayed by fallen riders. This is Matthew Hayman now setting a lone lead at the front of Paris-Roubaix and doing a great job as well. The veteran rider, he'll be 38 years of age on the 20th of this month. He's rode away from his breakaway group. He's been at the head of the Furs since we reached 108.75. Now just looking there at the group split along the countryside here now. We've still got this Bonen being pursued by Peter Sagan and Cancellara. Here they are. Now, whatever you may be thinking, this is not the result of unfair play by Etix, because the crash happened on a sector of cobblestones. Etix did, and Tony Martin put in pressure. Once he checked he had Bonen with him and didn't see Cancellara and Sagan, he put on the hammer, and it's working out so far.
Well, I think it is. This race has really been very difficult right from the get-go. As soon as the riders came away from Compiègne, there was attack after attack, almost 28 miles an hour in the first 2 hours of racing. As Matty Hayman scoots across there to line himself up for section number 15.
On to section 15 for Matt Hayman now, and this is a ride of 2,400 metres. It's 3-star. Lotto Jumbo here now, because they've got their man up in this group, Sepp van Mark, who's a brilliant one-day classics rider, still on form, yet to win this event, but he's come close so far. And the legs here of Matty Hayman, 7 wins in his career, Paul, and he hasn't actually won a race since he won Paris-Bourges back in October 2011.
Well, I suppose you could say, though, Phil, he's been responsible for a lot of victories of his Orica Green Edge squad.
Yes.
A little bit of a tricky turn around there, the Warlin to Briand part of this route. They're going to come out very shortly through Tilloy and head up towards Orchy. But I think we're far from seeing a decision in this race. A few moments ago, when there was a gap coming out of the Forest of Arenberg, almost 1¼ minutes back to the Peter Sagan Fabian Cancellara group, it looks to me as if by the time we head up towards Orchy, we're probably going to be looking at a little bit of a regrouping of all of the favourites. Tom Bonen's group there, with Tony Martin, who's done the majority of the pacemaking, has got to within 51 seconds of Matty Hayman, but Matty Hayman has got about 20 seconds advantage over the group behind. So on these section of cobblestones, the second group on the road now will be starting to see the early morning breakaway group, and not very far behind them is also the group of Fabian Cancellara and Peter Sagan.
Under pressure since the flag was dropped this morning, leaving Compiègne. The riders have been always at high speed, always under pressure, always breakaways or moves to make breakaways going on. This is sector 15 now for the Bonen group, for the Peter Sagan group, as they continue. Now there's 17 riders in the Bonen group, by the way. There's 12 in the group which is second group on the road now, because Hayman has left the Baker's dozen behind. He's on his own.
Once again, Peter Sagan is just sitting comfortably on the wheel there of Fabian Cancellara, who does not look like a man who is panicking at all. You see the way he negotiates around that corner. You know, he has to get everything right today. I think tactically he made a little bit of an error, and it's always easy to find a tactical error with hindsight when he looks back at his Tour of Flanders from last week. But he had his own plan going into that race. He knew where he wanted to attack, and I think he was caught hopping a little bit by the move of Peter Sagan. Today, those two men at the moment are currently locked together in the third group on the road.
But they both are champions. They're both inspired professionals, and the gap is far from insurmountable at the moment. We've got 73 kilometres left to go, and if they do get across to this lead group, who knows, the Bonen group might turn off a little bit. 49 seconds the spread just now, but that time gap is to Matthew Hayman. He's got a few seconds lead over the chase. But 70 left, the gap lost another second there. 46 seconds now. Peter Sagan is the rider in white to the right of our picture with the rainbow stands. Fabian Cancellara's sent his team up, two of his team, to try and close this gap before we get to the crucial closing stages of this race, where the cobblestones leap out and bite you. 46 seconds is the gap at the moment as they come off sector 15.
Sitting right on the wheel of the world champion there was Nicky Terpstra, a former winner of this race, and he looks very comfortable. It puts him into a good situation as well. He's a teammate of Tom Bonen and Tony Martin, so he can just sit there quite comfortably and probably get the psychological advantage of knowing that all of these other guys have got to do the pacemaking, while I can just sit here nice and comfortably in the slipstream.
Leaders are now hit sector 14 of 27 at the moment. Sector 14, Tilwa, 2.4 kilometres, 4-star. Bit of a nasty this one. Hayman is still up there. There's the names of the lead group: Nielsen, Puccio, Pocic. And a very, very good lineup of riders now are beginning to get confidence with every sector of cobbles that they clear. And watch out for Emmanuel Viti. 46 seconds is still the gap, but it's coming down second by second. The leaders have gone on to sector 14 now, 2.4 kilometres. As we're looking here now at the chase group containing Tom Bonen behind the 13 front runners. They've just picked up Hayman, by the way. They're now 41 seconds back of that lead group.
This is group number 2 on the road, the group that's got Tom Bonen and Tony Martin in it. But now all of a sudden, as that gap has come down to 41 seconds, Team Sky have decided it's their turn to crank up the pressure just a fraction. This is the third group on the road, coming on to the 14th to go section of cobblestones at Tilloy to Sars-les-Rosiers, and it's still under the control of Trek Segafredo on the front for Fabian Cancellara sitting in second position, but the gaps, Phil, they're starting to come down quite dramatically. That's about 40 seconds between the two.
Well, 35 seconds, isn't it? Or 36 now as we speak.
37.
37. You're going to be right before the end of this caption, I can assure you, Paul. As we're now watching, the gap is coming down, but the effort they're having to do, they're using all their team. The pursuers are on the right, the pursuiters are on the left here, as they try to hold off Cancellara and Sagan. If they can't hold them off, hurt them as much as they can before they come back.
This is the wearing down process now. Sky have come to lend a hand to the Tom Bonan group, as we can see on the front. Sky really starting to dish out the pain, but it's all a question now of how easy is the ride by Tom Bonan. Oh, look at that nasty corner going around there. You've really got to have your wits about you. In fact, Bosenhagen nearly lost it.
He lost his back wheel there. He almost shunted out Tom Bonan as well.
Well, Bonan was ready to make evasive action there. That's Bonan number 11 on the wheel of the ride, with the Norwegian flag on his back, the Norwegian national champion. And you can see pressure being applied, stretching that group out to 39 seconds. They're making a real meal of trying to nudge this gap down to that leading group of what is down to 13 riders.
Well, as they drive on, Sky have got 3 riders up here. Luc Rowe, Gianni Moscon and Ian Stannard, 4 riders in fact. Danny Van Poppel is up here as well. Now a little bit of a dig at the front and an acceleration just to close the gap there by Tom Bonan. Momentarily lost the wheel of Bosenhagen. The group Sagan is at 1:13. They continue to close on Tom Bonan. I wonder if the message will get through. 39 seconds to the leaders of the race today.
Well, it's amazing just to see sitting there in second and third position, Fabian Cancellara behind him, Peter Sagan, who is an amazing bike handler. He looks so relaxed, and in fact I had the chance to talk to his team manager and his coach, Pachi Villa, last night, and he was saying that it doesn't really matter how Peter Sagan goes into this race. He's a little bit more relaxed because he's finally got that monument victory under his belt that he's been looking for a couple of years. But you know what? He weighs in at 180 pounds and he's got fairly soft tyres today. His tyres are not very much more than 60 psi, which normally you pump your tyres up to about 110 psi when you know that the road surface is going to be good.
Well, it's every man for himself on this sector of cobblestone. They're just looking so they see them. Bosenhagen coming through on the left, probably doing the ride of his life at the moment in Paris-Roubaix. New team for him, remember, he's on Dimension Data this year. As they continue, Tom Van Ashbrook up there in second place as they race over the cobblestones. Sector 14 exit for the leaders. They went in with 41 seconds, they come out with 37. So they're still on the descendancy. And this is the third group on the road. This is Fabian Cancellara's group here. They're in the ascendancy, they are closing in. They're now timed at 1:10. Popovic looks over his shoulder. He's gone back to the group from the breakaway, so he's probably gone now to see if he can find Fabian Cancellara. He might be surprised to find him not there, because here he is. So it is a most tremendous pursuit here across northern France right now, but there's every indication it might all come back together. 68 kilometers to ride now. The calm face of Fabian Cancellara, the same must be said too of Peter Sagan. Nicky Terpstra also off to the right. All three, well no, 2 of them are winners, and Sagan would like to be a winner of Paris-Roubaix. It's a tough race this, and the worst, I have to tell them, is still to come. The world champion. Broken the jinx of being a world champion, won the great classic Tour de Flanders last week. What a way to win a race when you've pulled on the jersey of world champion, as he did last year in the USA. Everybody, this is Jaroslav Popovic, was with the group, now prepared to serve his time out as a professional cyclist in the service of Cancellara. He's picked up the pacemaking. This is remarkable by Jaroslav Popovic. The gap is at 1:11, and I presume that's the Tom Bonan, because then they add on the 33 seconds to the leaders on the road. Second feed for the riders. Keep up the energy, burn the calories for the last 67 kilometers of the race, because skulking around the countryside here are the famous Mons en Pavel, which is 3 kilometers of 5-star status, and also the dreaded Carrefour de l'Arbre at 240 kilometers into the race, and that's 2.1 kilometers. And there's plenty more sprinkling in between as well. Well, since the heavy riding we've seen from the start, it took its toll, you see, that fast speed. We're on a record speed for Paris-Roubaix for a long way today on good roads. And as a result of that, the field has hit the cobbles at full flight and they've paid the price. Now the next question, can the Group Sagan and Group Bonen get back together? This is the Group Sagan. Now we switched. This is the leading group on the road. 25 seconds to the Group Bonen. As they continue to pile on the pressure.
Well, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to have a rider or a couple of riders get into that early breakaway. Not necessarily here for Orica Green Edge to have a number of riders in the leading breakaway, but to have a guy like Popovic in the breakaway so he can sit up a little bit later on and be of assistance when you need strength alongside you coming into the crucial part of a race like this.
Such a good tempo, and despite the fact they look good, the gap continues to fall. 21 seconds now. Now they're saying 20. It's coming down very, very rapidly now. "18 seconds the gap as we try to cover 3 races in one here, because we've got the leaders, we've got the chasers who are containing Bonen, and then we've got the other chasers containing Cancellara and Peter Sagan. One has the feeling it's going to come back together. The question is when. We're down to 17 seconds between the two front groups.
The other question is who has managed to handle this section of hard chasing for the last 40 kilometres since we came through the forest of Arenberg, and how have they been able to conserve energy for the latter part of the race? And I think, yes, we will all come back together.
We've now entered just sector 13 here at Orchy. This is a 3-star stretch of road. They've gone in, the 13 front runners, they've caught up with Matt Hayward. There's now 15 seconds at the gap. But the Sagan group is also closing in on Tom Bonen's group.
Well, look how bad these cobbles are now. You can start to see riders jumping left and right over the road looking for a little bit of respite.
I'm very happy with his ride so far. Gianni Moscon, with the Italian on Team Sky. He's the rider now setting the pace here. Nielsen rather taking a drink, looking around. Seberg in the red there also. They're losing their impetus at the moment. If they don't keep pushing, we're going to see the arrival of Sagan and Cancellara up from the rear. The gap is 52 seconds. These boys are getting tired.
Well, the next section is a very nasty little section, the cobbles of Orchy, 1.7 kilometres long. One of the sections, just as they come away from it, is known as the Avenue of the Cimetière, or the Avenue of the Cemetery. And it's right next to the Avenue of the Abattoir as well. Now, this is the little recovery. There was a stop at the side of the road by Sepp van Mark, and his teammates stopped alongside him very, very quickly. But the fact that this group slowed down going through Orchy, it gave him quite an easy ride to get back.
He's coming back now. He's either on his mate's bike, and he's on. No, sorry, we've switched back to a teammate. That's the fatal commentator. 96 has helped him get back, but 91 is now safely back in the group. Sepp van Mark, 27 years of age and looking very, very strong today. He's finished 8th in the Grand Prix E3, 2nd in Gent-Wevelgem, 3rd last week in the Tour of Flanders. He's looking for the big step up to the podium here of Roubaix.
Squeeze around that
nasty
corner.
Swing. This is Orchy, Paul, where we used to go riding our bikes.
Yep, this is a very. It isn't.
The riders have now swung on to the Orchy sector 13 here. It's 1,400 metres of cobblestones. Sorry, sector 12 we've entered now. We've just come off sector 13 in Orchy, and it's 1.7 kilometres. And the gap is still there, closing but agonisingly slowly.
But the man who now has taken responsibility of the pressure on the front of this group is Tom Bonen in person. He realises he wants this victory. He wants to notch up win number 5 at Paris-Roubaix. He's loved this race over the years. This is the second group on the road at 47 seconds, and still Fabian Cancellara, he's decided now. Look at this, the acceleration's coming from Cancellara.
There comes a time when you have to do it yourself, and Fabian Cancellara decided this is getting too close to home. 60 kilometres, 38 miles from the finish, and Cancellara, riding his last Paris-Roubaix, is trying to put it to rights.
Right on his wheel is Peter Sagan there. He saw the acceleration. He knew that Fabian Cancellara was going to do it, and they've got a little bit of a gap.
The top two riders in that back group, Nicky Terpstra is also in there, the champion of the Netherlands, but he's not in that counter-attack at the moment. As those two riders try to put matters right, this is how it comes off a tight right-hander. Cancellara says enough is enough, it's time to go.
Hard to imagine. Look at the assistance he's getting though from this man, who must have incredible respect for Fabian Cancellara. But this is the world champion we're looking at here, one of the best bike handlers in the business at the moment, and right on the top of the handlebars, allowing that front wheel of his to try and find at least the smoothest part. Oh, a problem at the back.
Well, this is the rider who just came on the back, having assisted Sepp van Mark. This is Van Ashbrook here.
He went down in the corner again. He
yes.
just slipped because of the slightly dusty nature on some of these dry corners.
A little bit of a heavy fall, but he'll get back on his bike. Well, it's mano a mano now. Tom Boonen versus the other two favourites who have started the counter move. The gap is 38 seconds, 58 kilometres left to go. What a show by Tom Boonen, though.
That bottle just getting ejected from somebody's bike there. This is the second part of this cobblestone section. There's a bit of respite in the middle. As I said once again, they're off now. Section number 12. The cobbles of Orchy is done. Next on the horizon will be Bercé, and then after that it's Mons-en-Pévèle.
Well, this is hard riding now by the world champion Peter Sagan. It's almost a case of deja vu of last week now. Cancellara and Sagan having to do the work in the closing stages. A little bit early to think that. 58 kilometres out to go. Picking up riders from that front group now.
Yeah, but Phil, the gap now is down to 500 metres. 34 seconds the difference between the Tom Boonen group and Cancellara and Peter Sagan. Sagan is an incredible showman when it comes to riding a bike like this. He was very dominant last week in the Tour of Flanders. This is the leading group once again. Looks like Boonen's decided to turn off the gas a fraction, and he hasn't really limited the numbers in that group.
No, he hasn't. Well, it was about 30. He's down about 17 or 18, but all the rides that matter are right here. Sepp van Mark is the rider in yellow. Bosenhagen in the Norwegian colours. Sarah Motins is here. Sylvain Chavanel is the rider driving at the moment. They've got that little split here because Chavanel's gone back now to the chase group containing Sagan. Enough is enough for the former French champion.
Coming across the gap in the red, white and blue, or the blue, white and red, the champion of Holland, Nicky Terpstra, has seen this as an opportunity to get himself back into contention. He's probably, of the pre-race favourites, had one of the easiest rides. Looks like Luke Durbridge there on the right-hand side.
He's passed back now. They're picking him up, and this is going to only give them added confidence in the pursuit here now. 34 minutes. The world champion flicks his elbow at the former world time trial champion Peter Sagan and says, come on through. Two top men having to help each other to repair the damage.
I'm just looking at the difference in the pedalling styles on the left and the right hand side of the screen, Phil. They just seem so much more relaxed on the left hand side, trying to get themselves organised, where on the right hand side, looking at Cancellara, looking at Sagan, there's a sense of urgency. They want to nail this back. They want to get themselves back to the front end of this race before we start to head into Bercé and Mons-en-Pévèle.
Well, there's about 18 riders in the front group. Peter Sagan and Cancellara in the end have had to come and do all of the work themselves, but it's having an effect. The gap, 35 seconds. 56.4 kilometres. That's all that's left to ride now, Paul. We're heading for sector 11, which is our next stop. Sepp van Mark has put himself in a good position. He won't want to give that up. He won't want to see the arrival of Sagan or Cancellara now. I noted that Luke Durbridge, the Aussie, got onto the back of that group too and was hanging on in there. Sky have played all the cards, and they've played good ones just now. They're in a great position here. Moscon still setting the pace at the front.
The funny situation, Phil, is looking at this group here, there's a number of teams have got a large number of riders, but they're not collaborating together. This could be a moment to put a nail into the coffin of Peter Sagan and Fabian Cancellara. But those two riders behind, they seem to have realised how important it is. This is the real critical moment for the chasers to try and nail back that final few 500 metres. And that 500 metres in this part of France, with the fact that there's not too many trees around over the next part of the course, they will be able to see the difference, the relationship. That's just having a look there. Looks like Sagan are about to pick up a few more riders who've been tailed off.
Bottle grab there by Frédéric Baquet, who's up here in the front group. They continue on, still Riley Janssen van Rensburg there in third place, doing a great ride at the moment. Maxime Daniel is the rider, AE2R, second on the right. He's gone back towards the group now, these two, as they come up now. Cancellara, one by one, they're wiping out the leaders. Down on the lead group, the names for you: Bonen, Berghardt, Hausler in this front group, Luke Rowe of Wales and Great Britain, Moscon, Puccio, Stannard, Seberg, Marcel Seberg up there as well. The group has been halved under the pressure, but the favourites are there. Van Mark, Bosenhagen, Bonen, Viti must be thought as a favourite at the moment. We're on to sector 11 now.
Yeah, that's from Orchy to Bercy, 2.7 kilometres long. It's a very hard and precarious section with a couple of little bends in it as well. You have to be attentive at this point. 4 riders from Team Sky are in this group, but I've just got the feeling, Phil, that over this section and the next section, Mont-Saint-Pével, which is a 5-star section, that's the moment when Sagan and Cancellara have got the ability to bridge this gap, and they've got to take responsibility now.
I'll tell you what, this is a tough sector, although it's got 4 stars, 2.2 kilometres still to ride. The chase group has just entered that sector. The gap is 38 seconds. And now this is where they'll continue to drive. It's their only chance of gaining is now on these bad sections of road. Riding hard at the front. Team Sky know what they've got. Puccio is there. Second place is Moscon. 61 is Luke Rowe, the man who should benefit from this. And Ian Stannard, 61, 66. Then Tom Bonen, a favourite. Then 91, Van Mark, a favourite. Then Bosenhagen, a favourite. And those favourites try to hold off the world champion and Fabian Cancellara.
Yes, Team Sky really have played a good card this afternoon. 4 riders in the front at a job like this, and they are trying to open up that gap over the 2 favourites, and they are doing that. They're stretching out that advantage. At a moment like this, though, you can't think about any personal ambition. You've got to think about the team, and you're right. Team Sky with Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard in with this group, and Stannard, Phil, I have to say, looks very strong, but they've been looking after Luke Rowe, who said he's in the form of his life. Ooh,
and he got... Well, that's 2 Sky taken out there, and I don't think, maybe Stannard went down on that slippery road. The first rider forward was Moscon, I think.
No, Stannard's on the left-hand side.
But Luke Rowe has gone.
And Luke Rowe went down as well. Luke Rowe was in 4th position. Stannard managed to get around it. And it just goes to show, you might think everything is nice and calm, but all of a sudden you come around a corner and bang, there's just a little bit of moisture and you're out. Watch it again. Front wheel goes. Once the front wheel goes, there's not much you can do, and Stannard really got round that well on the left-hand side.
Stannard thumped the spectator there with his right shoulder, but all an accident. But now they've lost 50% of their team there, including Luke Rowe. You simply don't know what lies round the corner in Paris-Roubaix. 52 kilometres to go.
Well, the group for Peter Sagan a little bit further back there behind at 38 seconds. This is the leading group on the road, and I tell you what, I'm not sure about their heart rates, Phil, but mine just went up to about 180 as they came around that corner.
Paris-Roubaix, you don't anticipate a crash, it just happens, and that's really taken the impetus out now. It leaves 1 rider to set the pace for Ian Stannard. They've lost 50% of the pacemakers. That really is bad luck. And Luke Rowe, of course, was thinking more of victory at the finish. Stannard in second wheel here.
And you have to think about the fact, Phil, that all of a sudden you were in tactical superiority. 4 riders in a group of 15, 16, and boom, 50% of those wiped away in 1 corner.
Well, this is the second group, 34 seconds down. The leading group is split at the moment. We'll still call this the second group, as Peter Sagan tries to drive on here. Cancellara keeps him under control, but only just. And look how the pressure of these champions has reduced the size of that chase group.
Back with it.
That was Moscon, but having a little look again. That was Moscon going down. That was the lead. I thought it was a replay. This is Moscon going. as he hits, and Stannard right behind him, slams the brakes up. I don't know if he's got through yet.
Well,
Let's have another look.
Bonin in the blue right behind him. They managed to slow down. He steered his way around there. Well, Phil, I too thought that was a replay coming around that corner.
Isn't it? It's Puccio.
Yeah.
Or is it Moscow? Well, this is absolutely amazing. They're on the road, which appear dry to us. I think they've got a little bit of grease or just a film of dust on the top, and they're pushing themselves to the limit because this is an amazing pursuit. 31 seconds of the gap. Will there be anybody left standing in the front group to catch?
Well, all of a sudden, Team Sky, that were looking at 4 riders present in the front, now down to 1 man, and Ian Stannard is the last man standing for them. But look what it's done to the group. The group now down is down to around about 11-12 riders.
30 seconds the gap as the world champion and Cancellara chase on. How many more riders will meet their destiny in this breakaway? At the leaders now as they drive on. Note number 61 just off the front there, because Lucro has rejoined here with a terrific chase back. So Sky have put 2 more men back in front. Lucro and Ian Stannard were now on to number 10 of the sectors of 27. This is 3 kilometres now, 48 kilometres to go, and that is 30 miles.
30 miles of racing. We're looking now at the leading group, and they really are starting to wind it up, but still the gap is stretching to Peter Sagan and Fabian Cancellara in group number 2 on the road. They are now at 38 seconds. I think it's crunch time for Cancellara and Sagan if they want to win. Tom Boonen, number 11 there, is sitting quite comfortably in this group, but he's got no teammates up alongside him anymore. 61 just going through there. Luke Rowe picked himself up after that very nasty crash. Group number 2 now is on the cobbles of Bercy, section 10 to go. Look at Sagan zigzagging in there, right on the wheel of Fabian Cancellara. They're all waiting for Fabian to make his move. A
little bit of frustration with Sagan, I think, because there's too many riders back there not assisting in the chase. They've got the favourite tag. I guess they've got to do it, but it's not what they want to see. This is Marcus Burkhardt now. He's being distanced here by that front group, the BMC rider. 42 seconds. They're actually on the reversal for the first time for a long time here. We've gone out to 42 seconds, out to 43 seconds. That is why Sagan is beginning to get a little bit ragged round the edges. He sensed they're slowing.
Yes, he has, and this is a long section of cobblestones as they make their way around that corner, but still there's no indication of who is the strongest man in this group. It's really going to become quite tactical as we head down towards the finish line. And watch out for the Australian rider over on the left-hand side there, Phil, because as we head into this 5-star section now, Mont-Saint-Pével, Henrik Hausel is looking quite comfortable.
Well, they're starting to get the tails up now at 47 kilometres to go. They know the chase has been bitter behind, but riders falling. The gap closing right down. Now it's opening. It's gone out to 45 seconds. The champion of Latvia on the back at the moment, Sadam Otens.
Oh, and the dampness starting to appear once again in Mont-Saint-Pével. The flags are all out, the flags of the Lion of Flanders. And it looks as if the acceleration is starting to come from Sepp van Marken. Now this is the race that he wants. This is Tête de la Course. He's made the move, and Stannard is scrambling across to try and get into his slipstream.
Sepp van Mark, he's had a 4th and an 11th and a 2nd in his finishes here at Paris-Roubaix. He's never won it. And now he's had all sorts of bother. He's not a bit of bother getting around that corner, but he's still controlling the race. 48 seconds now is the gap. 10 riders in this front group. He's got some good help with his teammates still here too, because that's Martin Wijmans of Belgium at the back for the Lotto Jumbo. There's the smoke indicating the tailwind here, and they are flying over this sector 10.
Well, this is the moment when you got to take responsibility. You can't think about holding anything back. Oh, there's another big crash at the back.
That's a big one. And that is in the Peter Sagan group that crash has come. Sagan missed it. It's Cancellara went down, isn't it?
It looks as if that was Cancellara went down first.
Sagan missed it. Yes, and Cancellara and Sagan went up on the grass, came back on. Now, is Fabian okay to start again?
Well, I tell you what, the man who had the reactions there was Peter Sagan, immediately onto the grass. But the thing is, Phil, look at the clock. 53 seconds. The time is starting to be eked out now by Sepp van Mark, with in second position on the road Ian Stannard in that dark blue jersey of Sky, but scrambling across in third position on the road is Tom Boonen.
Now, is this the turning point, if it hasn't been one already, in Paris-Roubaix? Has the elastic snapped? Peter Sagan now, he's seen his co-favourite Fabian Cancellara go down. Nicky Terpstra, a winner a couple of years ago, went down as well. And now Cancellara's got no friends here. Everybody riding behind him. I'm not sure they can help him. Now we've got to see if indeed we see the return of Spartacus here. Cancellara.
Well, Paris-Roubaix has always been a race for the audacious, and that's exactly what Sepp van Mark has decided to do here as he comes off section number 10, the section of Mons-en-Pavel. And what a dramatic crash that was as we have a quick look there. Cancellara was right in the middle of the cobblestones. His front wheel went, and as I said to you, Phil, once the front wheel goes, there's absolutely no correction you can do.
And I have to say, Sagan went country there and got round the mess. He's a fantastic bike handler, but it's unusual to see Cancellara do a ride. I think I said Sagan went up on the countryside, but Terpstra had a nasty fall there. He hit his face on the ground. Let's hope he's okay.
Calm coming back, tête de la course, head of the race. Sepp van Mark and Stannard now joined by Tom Boonen. Boonen doing the majority of that work to peg them back. Edvald Boasson is there. Luke Rowe caught a bit on the back foot. He's here up alongside number 41, Heinrich Hausler, and big old man there from Lotto Soudal wearing 77, Marcel Seeberg.
Another great ride here. Luke Rowe's only just got back on. Now he's on the defensive. He needs to be carried back up to these. He needs a little time to recover. But look at that gap, Paul. It's out of a minute and 2 seconds now. So Peter Sagan, Fabian Cancellara, Nicky Terpstra, three riders who should be at the front are still very much on the defensive, and the gap is going out. 62 seconds now. Is it over? At 8 we are now on, Paul, and this is 1400 metres.
Yes, it's rated just a 3-star section of cobblestones. The difference between Peter Sagan and this group of riders we're looking at here, the 7-man leading group, is all of these riders are actually collaborating to try and make a success of the breakaway. These guys are thinking about the victory here this afternoon, whereas Peter Sagan behind, he doesn't have that many guys up alongside him to help, to give him a little bit of a respite against that wind. And look at the flag on the right-hand side there. The riders every now and again now are picking up a very nasty headwind, and that's something that Peter Sagan and even Fabian Cancellara, a little bit further back down on the race, have got to put up themselves.
Just looking at the breakaway at the moment. Just to remind you who they are: Tom Boonen, Alexis Saramotin, Sepp van Mark, Edvald Boasson, Matti Heyman, Ian Stannard and Emmanuel Viti. The riders, all of them, class acts, and I wouldn't like to pick a winner just now.
Yes, I certainly wouldn't like to go down to the betting office either. Boonen looks very good, very comfortable. He loves the cobbles. And he knows, I think, Phil, he knows in the back of his mind that if he wants to win this race, he's going to have to win it on his own, because if he drags Sepp van Mark down towards the finishing line, Sepp van Mark is a pretty rapid finisher. This is the second group on the road now, and there you can see Peter Sagan getting some help. But look at the gap. It's a minute and 12 seconds. That corresponds to around about a kilometre physical difference between the leading group of riders and this second group on the road.
I'm not sure the firepower is left in this group to help Peter Sagan bridge the gap now. Same might apply a minute or so back to Fabian Cancellara. They've really found the face of Paris-Roubaix that respects no reputation whatsoever. Heinrich Hausler sits here at the back. Minute 10 seconds. In front of him, Marcel Seeberg. Then we've got Luke Rowe. They're coming back, Paul. They're going to recharge again. This is an incredible return by Luke Rowe up there in the black.
I'll tell you one thing, if they drag Heinrich Hausler, number 41, to the finish line and the finish on the velodrome here in Roubaix, let's not forget that guy from Inverell in Australia has got a very rapid sprint, and he will be inspired by the fact that he's got himself to the finish of this great monument.
Well, this is he's had a high finish before, but he's never been on the podium here in the event. And he's come back. 37 kilometres to go. If this is a normal road race, it wouldn't be very far at all. But this isn't a normal road race. We've now got 10 riders up front.
And Peter Sagan still hanging on there at 1 minute and 10 seconds. Tom Boonen has got reinforcements now with Hausler. Matty Hayman, well, he looks extremely powerful as he picks his way around that corner in first position. Wevelgem, well, that's where the race was that Peter Sagan won.
Well, from the giants of Flanders to the giants of this year's Paris-Roubaix, 10 riders now set fair, 37 kilometres to go. 69 seconds, Bosenhagen has got to the front. At least he knows the two boys from Sky pretty well. He knows their strengths as well. This is the chase group containing Peter Sagan. And he's got some help now from last year's team winners, Giant Alpecin. They're off sector 8.
Yes, but it's still locked in at that same time gap, 1 minute and 10 seconds. They need to begin collaborating at the front. A bit of a grimace now starting to appear on the face of Tom Boonen. Looks over his shoulder trying to ascertain who's got the firepower.
The gap is 1 minute 10 to Peter Sagan's group. The front group are urging each other on, not least the man who's looking for the record in the Paris-Roubaix today, Tom Boonen. His 5th win, if it's to come. But he's got a few favourites amongst him here, including Sepp van Mark, as they continue to drive on, and drive on they are going to do.
Acceleration here, Phil, coming from Luke Rowe around that corner. Now Sky are in a very good tactical position here. They've got 2 riders in this group. A very powerful man in the name of Ian Stannard. He's towards the back of the group. They've got to take advantage of the tactical advantage of having numbers in the last hour of racing here. 36 kilometres to go. They're inside of 25 miles to go now, and Peter Sagan is very isolated in this second group on the road. No mates for the world champion this afternoon, and he was a little bit unlucky to get caught out there and slowed down by that accident of Fabian Cancellara. Everyone, once they get to the showers, not too far away from our commentary position, will have a story to tell tonight.
The fact that Cancellara fell away in that crash means that Sagan lost a valuable ally in the chase to rejoin the front runners, and since then it's been on the reversal. These are the front runners now. Tom Boonen, number 11, pushes on. Luke Rowe is on his shoulder. Alexis Saramotin, the champion of Latvia, is 3rd. Heinrich Hausler is 4th. Bosenhagen is 5th. Matty Hayman is 6th. Those are the big drivers of the race now.
And there doesn't seem to be any passengers at all in this group, but it's going to become quite tactical down towards the finish. Nobody wants to come onto the velodrome with a group of 6 or 7 riders. Everybody would prefer to come on in the solo position, and I'm sure in the back of 1 or 2 riders, that's what they're thinking about. Luke Rowe, he's just got his hand up there. Put his hand up, but he's looking down at his back wheel, but his hand up, I think, was to ask the team car to come forward.
Maybe wants a little answer to a few questions now. He's been off the back twice. He's come back strongly off the back, not by his own volition. He crashed, of course. He's been threatening to do something great. This is a rider who has only won 1 race in his life. It was the opening stage of the Tour of Britain back in September 2012. Since then he's ridden for his team, but they kept him on the team because they saw in him something special. I think today he's showing us how special he is.
Well, it's payback time for Luke Rowe, and certainly he's in an ideal position here, having Ian Stannard. And talk about a man who's become a bit of a specialist in the cobbled classics over the last couple of years. Ian Stannard is one of those riders, a former national champion of Great Britain, and a real strong man to have on board the squad. He's also one of those guys, Phil, who over the years at Team Sky, he's very often sacrificed himself for the team. But like Sean Yates many times, when it came to this one race of the year, he wants to give it his all.
Looking here at Eddie Bosenhagen, champion of Norway. A man that could well try for a lone break towards the end. Looking down at this group, Paul, I've just been thinking that 35 kilometres to go. There's a couple of good sprinters here, and there are a couple of good riders who could leave them if they're feeling strong. They mustn't take Heinrich Hausler, as you said, to the stadium in Roubaix, which is where we are, and it's bathed in sun, and we have a huge crowd. I would look to somebody perhaps like a Viti, maybe.
Well, let's not forget, we're still looking at 35 kilometres to go, and nobody wants to come onto the velodrome in Roubaix in a 10-man group like this. They would certainly like to reduce the numbers. So I would expect on a couple of the sections a little bit later on to see an acceleration to try and reduce numbers in that breakaway group. And obviously the section of cobblestones you've got to think about has got to be the Carrefour de l'Arbre, which comes at 240 kilometres. It's ideally situated if you've got the power, and there's a nice long false flat. The man who I would expect to have the move there will be Tom Boonen, the man that is for him it's probably the place that he's got left in today's route where he can make the move if he wants to write his name into the history books, win this race for an amazing 5th time.
Well, Tom Boonen, I think, because he's no longer the fast finisher he was, will need to try and go alone, and that to me is the place to go. Camphin-en-Pévèle. It comes at 238 kilometre point into the race of 257. 19 kilometre breakaway to the finish. Perfect. We're heading towards sector 7 at the moment. We're just on a kilometre out. Now, what was Boonen doing there? He's calling for the team car, I think. He's dropped to the rear of the bunch, but I don't think he's got a mechanical. Saramotins, he's doing the ride of his life. He's never featured in races other than national championships, and he's currently the national champion of Latvia.
Another thing to factor in right now as well, Phil, is there are 2 teams with 2 riders in this leading group. I am cycling with Heinrich Hausler and Saramotins from Latvia. They've got teammates up alongside them, as has Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard. If any of the other guys have a mechanical incident running into this final few kilometres, well, it's all over.
Well, let's just have a look what's going on now, as Team Sky's been called to the front here, so this could be the problem with Luke Rowe. This is Marcel Seeberg. Stannard is the Sky rider on the front, so the card is coming up to look for Luke Rowe. He has called the car. You better watch out, Seeberg sneaks away at this moment in time. 33 to go. I think possibly Luke Rowe has a problem with his bars. He's been seen to be banging them, and you know, he may have given them a knock when he went down. Maybe they just need straightening out a bit. Look at the crosswind now, the flag showing it right across the left hand of our picture across the race. It's a brave move by Seeberg at a crucial moment of the day.
Well, you talked about riders that don't win very many professional events throughout their career. At 33 years of age, Marcel Seeberg's only won 8 races as a professional, but he is a powerful man, a man who's led to guys like Andre Greipel to many, many victories throughout his career. Just looking to see where Luke Rowe is. It's Ian Stannard on the front of that group in 1st position for Sky, and in 5th position is Luke Rowe, who's nodding his head a little bit. He looks as if he's in a little bit of difficulty. Yeah,
a little bit laborious. He always rides this long, stretched out position. They come off sector 7. I'll tell you what, Luke Rowe's almost smiling there as he's chatting with Sepp van Mark. Could be going head to head very soon, because as we go on to sector 6, it's Luke Rowe who shoots to the front. And this is another section of cobblestones at 3. It's in 2 portions, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nasty section. You come out of the little town of Templeuve. It's 1.3 kilometres to begin with, a little bit of tarmac in the middle, and then you go on to the next section, which is 1.1 kilometres long, and it's quite a hard section with a bit of a false flat involved. I don't think that this would be the section where a guy like Tom Boonen would make the move. I think he would wait, because on this section of the Carrefour de l'Arbre, there's such a long false flat. If you've got the power in your legs, you could ride the guy behind you off your wheel.
Well, now we'll see. The 2 Sky boys are really having a... See the long reach there on Luke Rowe in 2nd place, the much shorter reach of Ian Stannard, his teammate. Likes to be stretched out. Sepp van Mark is the rider on the right of our picture. He's been 2nd in this race. He's never won it. Boonen, the boy in blue, he knows all about winning this race. And the man who might spring the surprise, Aviti, sat now at the back on sector 6. Meanwhile, Peter Sagan comes on 58 seconds behind and having to do the work himself. You know, in the last 11 kilometres, Sagan has only gained 7 seconds on that front group.
But it seems to be that he is doing the bulk of the work. He's wearing that rainbow jersey with pride. The jersey that he's wearing shows to everybody at the side of the road that he is the world champion, and today he's riding like a true champion. Boonen loves the cobblestones. Whenever the speed tends to go down too much for his liking, he goes to the front and turns up the cranks just a little bit.
Well, the Renter crowd's rushed around the course now to get to the sharp end of the race as we run into the last 25 kilometres. Tom Bone, I have to say, he makes these cobbles look non-existent. He is such an incredible bike handler and so solid. Sepp Van Mark, the big danger, I think, to Bonen today, sits in his slipstream. Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard have ridden another brilliant race. They could be on the podium tonight.
I think you could have made that statement the other way round as well, Phil, because I think to Sepp Van Mark, he knows that his big threat to victory is the man right in front of him from his own country as well, Tom Bonen. He knows.
Absolutely.
Tom Bonen is the specialist. You know, some riders, it's a question of the position on the bike. Riders, some guys can just float across the cobbles. Some guys enjoy riding on the cobbles. Like poor old Fabien Cancellara, who was involved in that nasty little accident on the section of Mont-Saint-Pével. He's been left a long way back down the road at the moment. But like Fabien Cancellara, Tom Bonen is one of those specialists of cruising over the cobbles.
Well, the sign saying 25 kilometres from the finish line in Roubaix, just over 15 miles left to ride. These boys are really on the back heel now. 57 seconds of the gap. They pulled back 1 second since they came on to this section of cobblestones. But I guess the thing is they pulled back at least. Looks like Koen de Koort setting the pace on the front at the moment. The front group here very soon are going to start infighting because they won't all want to go to the finishing line with these riders around them. There's too many good finishers here. There's the 25 kilometres to go. Koen de Koort grabs his bottle. Spends a lot of time in Australia, has an Australian wife in Melbourne.
Well, none of these riders, Phil, in this leading group now will be feeling too happy or too confident because the size of the group is too big, and they will realise that they're in a seriously bad tactical situation, having Stannard and Luke Rowe, and I'm pretty sure that if it came down to the sprint, Stannard would sacrifice himself for Luke Rowe, because Luke's got a pretty good turn of speed when it comes down to the end of a race like this.
Well, if you want a man of the race, there are so many candidates, but I would spare a thought for Matthew Hayman because he was attacking from the gun today, trying to go away with the groups and finally got away, of course. Now he's driving the breakaway here. He's going up and up in the Australian people's stature today because he's pulling this race along. The only man on the Orica green edge to make the selection, Salamotin's creeping up on the left of our picture. Sepp Van Mark just flicked to see who it was, and then Tom Bonen. These boys are riding their own race, yet they're in a group of 10. They're just all concentrating on holding these roads, holding the wheels and getting on with the job. Nobody having a word with anybody.
Well, a little bit of a touch of shoulders there between Luke Rowe and Salamotin's. Luke Rowe wanted to be that little bit closer up towards the front, around this corner. Everybody around nice. You're right though, Phil, Matty Hayman on the front there, he just looks very calm.
I thought he looks so good. I would like to see him make a late attack here and see if he can stitch it up. It would be an incredible result. Only one Australian's ever won, and he's here. And that's Stuart O'Grady back in 2007.
Well, they're about to come off. This is the section of Bourgel. Once they come off this, they've got about 5 kilometres before they come to Confins-en-Pével, which is slightly uphill.
23.3 kilometres to go. Looking through the legs of Marcel Seeberg here with the breakers. But I'll tell you what, it looks as though the hard work of Koen de Koort back in that chase group is having an effect. They went in at 58 seconds, they're down to 49. Salamotin's never won a major race in his life, but he's a specialist at winning the championship of his country. And he's in this decisive move today, because I think that's what it will be. Or will they come back on the dreaded Carrefour de l'Arbre? It's possible, let's face it. To number 5 now, having just entered, and there's been a big move by Team Sky. Ian Stannard pushing at the front now. They've dispatched the Latvian champion Salamotin's off the back. You can see him in the distance, but we're now getting down to the sharp end of the race, and in second place is indeed Hayman, and third is Bonen, and the split is there.
Cast your mind back in history just a little bit. There was a breakaway being chased down on this section of cobblestones a few years ago. George Hincapie was there, he crashed. And there was another rider in the group with him, his own teammate by the name of Tom Bonen. And it was here that he made the move to climb onto the podium of Paris-Roubaix for the very first time. And there he is, sitting in the same section of cobblestones in third place. Yes, and it's now down to 5.
I have to say, a sad sight seeing George Hincapie sitting on the side there in the ditch holding his shoulder. But looking down now, Tom Bonan is watching his rivals eliminate themselves with this flurry of attack. They split the breakaway. Still Sepp Van Mark is here. Ian Stannard has taken over what Luke Rowe started. I can't see, but I don't think Luke Rowe's here in this selection now.
Well, this is a hard section of cobbles, Phil. It's a slight false flat to Edvald Bosenhagen, popped straight onto the back there. For me, currently the most dangerous man in this group of 5 seems to be Sepp Van Mark. Here's a right-hand bend, a nasty little right-hand bend as these riders, once they come off this section of cobblestones, it's the one that everybody really talks about. The Carrefour de l'Arbre, the Pavé de l'Arbre, they are horrendous to begin with. The Pavé Bleu, they call them, because they are dark blue granite, very smooth indeed. But this now is a real decisive moment. A minute and 16 back to Peter Sagan. He's an awful long way back, but Team Sky have decided they're going to lay it down.
And Matt Hayman got himself in a bit of bother on the right-hand side of the course there. He's okay though. He's going to hook up on the wheel of Bosenhagen. Just about grits his teeth and hangs on here, because this could be the leading group. Bonan, Hayman, Stannard, Van Mark, Bosenhagen, they are the riders now who are pushing on. The gap has suddenly shot out to Peter Sagan. A minute and 17 seconds now, 18 to go.
Look how supple though Tom Bonan looks in second position. He's got a much smaller gear. He's really got that fluidity, the suppleness in those legs that you need to survive over cobblestones like this. Stannard, on the other hand, is looking very powerful. He's hammering that massive big gears over. Probably a 53 tooth chainring on the outside, using the 13 or 14 tooth sprocket at the back there on his 30mm tyres. There you can see over to the right hand side, the flags are high, and what a crowd here. They know this is a very important strategic moment.
It's the one they all come to see here, the spare wheel being held by teammates. That was for Sepp Van Mark, but he come through safely. There's now that irrepressible Tom Bonan who pushes on again at the front, the only survivor of his team now. In fact, they're all survivors of their teams now, so it's a very equal battle. 17 kilometres to go. Ian Stannard looks as though he's in trouble. Looks over his shoulder to see where Luke Rowe is. I think he's faded.
I just feel though, Phil, that if Tom Bonan wants to make history here this afternoon, he's got to make the move once we get onto this next section of cobblestones. It is the ideal section of cobblestones if you've got the power in your legs to put time between yourself and everybody else. There's a right-hand turn followed by a left-hand turn, then you've got that long, interminable false flat on the cobbles up to the old cafe at the top of the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Could be the big moment of this year's Paris-Roubaix. We've had a few, I must confess, but this could be where the man leaves to go and try and take the big cobblestone that awaits him in the stadium. It's as big a crowd as I can recall in the stadium here at Roubaix. And although they've had overnight rain, we've had a perfect spring day of racing. Cold at the start, warming up nicely now. There's the right-hand turn. We head up towards sector number 4, the last 5-star sector of this year's Paris-Roubaix.
Well, this is it. This is the Pavé Bleu. Around the corner, it's Sepp Van Mark in first position. He puts Matty Hayman into a spot of bother. This is not necessarily the moment to accelerate, but Van Mark has decided to take advantage, puts time between himself and Tom Bonan, but Bonan knows this section of cobblestones extremely well.
Van Mark has played the first card here as he takes risks there. He's caught out, no doubt, to Matthew Hayman, who's been hanging off the back. But Stannard, who moments ago looked pretty tired, is now riding again on the cobblestones. Tom Bonan's going to have to take his wheel, and so too Bosenhagen. Well, look at the risks being taken here by Sepp Van Mark. This, he said, is my Paris-Roubaix. I've been close so many times, I want it now.
Well, he's made the move, and Stannard has found something. Just look at the way he went round this corner. His front wheel bouncing all over the place. Serious control there, but Stannard is clawing his way back. They haven't yet got to the slightly uphill part. Bonan looking for the safe way around here. Edvald Bosenhagen sitting in 4th position now. They've moved over off the cobblestones to find a little bit of smooth ride here before they take the left-hand bend, and then it drags right their way up to the cafe.
What a bizarre race this really is. Look at this. The finest cyclists are riding on grass here and mud, and now back onto the broken roads. The race that there is no comparable event for it, and still trying to win it at this point. 16 kilometres out. The man who's finished 2nd and 4th, Sepp Van Mark. pushes on now. It's left to Stannard because Bonin doesn't seem capable of helping Ian Stannard just now.
Well, Sepp van Mark has made the move. He's prizing the gap open. Bonin is making the move into that left-hand corner. He wants to go around there in first position because this is the slight uphill part of the course now. And he's really bouncing in that typical Tom Bonin style. Bonin knows, Phil, that if he wants to get to the victory here for the fifth time, he's got to get back onto the wheel of his compatriot. And look at that, the gap is still there for Sepp van Mark.
The corridor of noise here as two Belgians try to dictate this event. Sepp van Mark at the moment is doing just that. Remember that Belgium has won this event 55 times to France's 30. That's 25 more victories to the nation literally across the road.
Well, Tom Bonin here has found an ally in the Norwegian champion Edvald Boasson. He's found something from somewhere to slowly eat his way across this gap. He's just looking at the back wheel of Sepp van Mark now, just eating his way forward, and Bonin has got somebody to pace him along there. He's sitting nice and comfortably. If they can make the junction here, well, it's game on again for everybody.
Van Mark drives on, flags of Flanders there, trying to control a Belgian rider here. The last Belgian rider to win this race was Tom Bonin back in 2012. Sepp van Mark has come close. He is a man of the classics, and he's decided to make his move 16 kilometres out from the finish. He hasn't won it yet.
Well, Sepp van Mark there, Phil, coming off the Carrefour de l'Arbre, but that's not a very big gap between the two of them. As they make the right hand onto the tar and then turn left off this road, which is not too far away from Gruzon, they head on to the next section of cobbles, but it's a fairly flat section of cobbles which they can take at fairly high speed. You just see Stannard there taking on one last little drink before we get into the critical part of this race. But this is a brave move by Sepp van Mark. He doesn't want to have the risk of going down to the finish line. Remember when he finished in second place here, he came onto this velodrome with a certain Fabian Cancellara. He thought he was going to be faster, and guess what happened? He got beaten.
We're now on sector 3 here. We've just turned left onto it and leading with quite a commanding lead and going away at the moment, Sepp van Mark, as Bonin himself is going to have to chase down his own countryman on a rival squad here if he wants to win his 5th Paris-Roubaix. Then you've got Ian Stannard struggling a little bit at times, but master of arts today, Ian Stannard. Boasson just behind those two. Then Matty Heyman hanging in.
You can just about feel why Tom Bonin loves this race. It's such an incredible race. It probably shouldn't really exist anymore. They shouldn't build roads like this anymore, but they do, and these guys race them at speeds in excess of 30 miles an hour. Bonin wants this. You can see it in his face now. He just keeps looking that little bit further up the road. He doesn't care who's sitting behind him. He doesn't care who's in his slipstream. He knows that the victory of Paris-Roubaix is there, and it's got a yellow jersey on it at the moment. It's not the yellow jersey of the Tour de France. It's the yellow jersey of Lotto Jumbo, the Dutch team, but this rider is most certainly from Belgium, Sepp van Mark, number 91.
The form of the year for Van Mark is better than Tom Bonin's, but Tom Bonin is being drawn by a race he has a love affair with. Don't forget that Van Mark was 3rd last week and 2nd in Gent-Wevelgem just before the Tour de Flanders. He's got the form, but these 4 riders have been simply outstanding today. It's occasions like this when you really would like all 4 to win, but that won't be the way, and he hasn't got away yet. 10 seconds is the first gap we've got. It's Stannard chasing now.
Well, they need to collaborate in that group behind if they want to pull back this man. Sepp van Mark, he's taken the race by the horns here this afternoon. He knows that this is the risky move, but he doesn't want to come onto the velodrome with anybody else in his slipstream. He has taken the risk of riding this final 13 kilometres alone. It's probably going to take him 15 to 16 minutes, but that is still not a massive gap. It's not unsurmountable, and if these riders behind can find a little bit of firepower left in their legs, they could pull him back.
Looking now for sector number 3. He's through the gears again. Don't look over his shoulder yet. He's just got to give it everything he's got left, because this is his move here. He even threw in a few cobbles on the corner there just for goodwill in Paris-Roubaix. Back onto the smooth road again. Matty Heyman now is hanging on, but he's come back and he's hanging on to what would be the finest finish of his career in Paris-Roubaix. Don't let the gap open now, Matthew, as Bonan goes through. Stannard looks up for the fight again all of a sudden. And watch out for the man that could surprise us all in that champion of Norway's jersey, Bosenhagen. There's no indication who's going to win this yet.
Phil, there is firepower in that group behind. These are not men who are going to give up this afternoon, and all of a sudden Edvald Bosenhagen has got the power to help his former teammate there, Ian Stannard, in the black jersey on Team Sky. And of course, everybody knows how motivated the man in the blue shorts is there, Tom Bonan. He's won this event on 4 previous occasions. He wants history, and he said this is really what's motivated him over the years to stay in the sport, to try and win it and put it on the shelf for a 5th time.
12 kilometres to go. They are coming back at 9 seconds now. This race is still one of any 5 in the lead. Into Charang now, Paul. 12k to go.
Yeah, it's hurting, Phil. It's hurting every one of these bike riders. Edvald Bosenhagen, he lost a 2 or 3 bicycle lengths advantage off the wheel of Tom Bonan then, but he dragged himself back. He really looked for that last little bit of energy, and now all of a sudden it's done for Sepp van Mark. He's back in a leading group of 5.
12 kilometres to go. 12 kilometres to go. The race has come together, and now which one will attack next? Well, we're looking at the 5 leaders, but of course we built up very heavily Fabian Cancellara, and well, we might have done so, because as we go back towards these are the chasers at the moment. Sorry, they were split away from that breakaway group, and then we go back to the Sagan group, and then a long way back now is in fact Fabian Cancellara. These boys might get back up here. They're the lead cars in front. But you know, it's been a day for Fabian Cancellara. It's his farewell race. He's not going to win it for a 4th time now. He was unlucky to fall, but it was his own volition. Nobody knocked him off, and he lost the vital gap. But I think it was lost for those boys in the forest of Arenberg today.
No, it certainly was. It's been a great race though, Phil, right from the very start. Let's not forget we started looking at these pictures at 10 to 11 local time here in France. There is the entrance into section number 2 to go, and this is the 2nd group on the road. There's about 23 seconds separating them, and now that they've pulled the cars out, there's only 1 car behind the leading group of 5 I would say, and that is the neutral service vehicle and of course the referee.
Tell you what, if those chasers get back on in the next couple of kilometres, we could have a surprise winner there from that group behind. Never say never. Things change when you get off these cobblestones and run down the street, and the adrenaline starts coursing through the veins as you turn into the stadium in front of what is a massive crowd. Heyman on the top of our picture, the other 4 leading the way by Sepp van Mark, Bosenhagen. Heyman quickly slots into number 3. Look at the pressure being put on by the Belgian at the front. Here we go again.
Sepp van Mark in that yellow jersey of Lotto Jumbo has put the acceleration in, but this is not, you know, this is a very difficult section of Cobblesville to make the gap, because you've got this tarmac on either side of the road. The dangerous part is actually when you go around the corners and move from one side of the road to the other. You've got to jump over that little edge of cobblestones. And a number of years ago, I think it was 1983, I remember Henny Kuiper coming up to this point, and he jumped across the section of cobblestones and his tyre popped off when he only had about a 20-second advantage. Fortunately, he was able to get a quick wheel change and got onto the velodrome and got himself the victory. It's all now slowly coming back together, but these are nervous moments, and look at that time gap. It's down to 22 seconds, and if Heinrich Hausler can get back here, well, we could have an Australian winner. And I'm not discounting Matty Heyman either there, by the way, because he looks pretty strong.
The track finish might fool him a little bit. I don't know. This man here, Edvald Bosenhagen, for me, is a man who could well take this victory now, and he's prepared to drive at this stage of the race. He's feeling strong. The kilometres are ticking down. We're in single figures. The gap is 22 seconds. The split on this breakaway group. This is the 2nd group. That is Heinrich Hausler, 41. And they're out of sight up front now, so I don't think they are going to come back. I'm sure Salamotins has got nothing left, that rider in 3rd place.
Well, sadly, as you can see, this is the dodgy part of this section of cobblestones, the fact that it zigzags left and right. You've got to jump across that cobbled barrier towards the side, go across the cobblestones and go over to the smoothness on the other side. They're off section number 2 to go. Now all they've got really is the false flat, the little climb, and it feels like a climb after over 250 kilometres in the saddle away from the town of M.
We're in the area of M right now, and we're heading towards the stadium now. Well, whatever happens in the next couple of kilometres, if Tom Bonan even doesn't win this race, he's ridden a superb Paris-Roubaix. It may or may not be his final attempt at his attack. Stannard has gone. They all looked the wrong way. They didn't see it go, so he's made the move at the right time. The reaction has got to come from Bonan, and it has.
Well, Stannard waited to see these guys on the other side of the road looking at each other. He knows this is a do-or-die effort. He doesn't want to go onto the stadium with guys like Edvald Boasson-Hagen. He knows him. He used to be his teammate when Edvald Boasson-Hagen in third position there raced for Team Sky. Bonan, though, has said, I'm not throwing away Paris-Roubaix. I've won it 4 times before, but I want it number 5. I'm not going to let anybody jump off the front end of this group, but he's leaving a lot of energy here. He looks over his shoulder and says to Sepp van Mark, mate, you want to win Paris-Roubaix? Come and do your turn now.
And he is doing just that there. No British rider has won Paris-Roubaix. The best have been Barry Hoban in 1972 and Roger Hammond in 2004. They both claim third place in this great event. And now Ian Stannard, the winner of Het Nieuwsblad a couple of times, but he's been nailed back. And it's Sepp van Mark who's done it in the end. There wasn't a big reaction from Bonan. Now, Paul, if you were a team manager, who would you see as the danger man to win this race? Because I honestly don't know.
I do. Edvald Boasson-Hagen is
my
the
danger man
to
too.
beat. He's the guy who's got the fastest turn of speed, and I think they all know that. He's the kind of guy who can win in a group of 25-30 when it comes down to a sprint, and he's probably the fastest rider, and he's shown great form so far this season. That's one of the reasons why Mark Cavendish, who's only ridden Paris-Roubaix once before, decided he would come to this race to try and help Edvald Boasson-Hagen, and here he is in the right position. But the other guys, they all know him. They know how fast he can be.
Yes, and he's riding with confidence. He's looking around, he's checking everybody, watching every move here. He's looking possibly the freshest of the 5 right now. 5 kilometres to go for the rest of the breakaway. Seberg at the back here, Hausler just in front of him. They are 35 seconds back. You know, if you look at this, Paul, we're probably about 6-7 minutes from the finish of Paris-Roubaix. That's all they've got to go now. These boys have been out in front since we went at 189 kilometres to go. And they're still there. The remnants are, at least.
We're looking at almost 7 hours in the saddle and just about 7 minutes to go to the finish. This is the climb. It's almost the Col de M, I would have to say. And there's another move going from Matty Hayman.
Well, there'll be a lot of people in Australia out of the seats now. The beer and the barbecues will be through the roof because Matty Hayman has launched an attack. And again, Sepp van Mark digs extremely deep. And so too does Boasson-Hagen. He grits his teeth. He's going. Boasson-Hagen flicks across, grits his teeth, looks for the move. Can he hit it now? 4 to go.
Phil, this is the indication that not one of these riders feels very confident going down to the finish. They all want to try and get away and come onto the velodrome on their own. Bonan, he's been here so many times before. He's got to try and conserve as much energy as possible. He's got to try and remember how he used to win the sprints as a great bunch sprinter. And this is a man now who wants to write his name into the record books.
Well, as you look here at Tom Bonan, the attack again has come from Sepp van Mark, and Bonan has been left to respond to this because, remember, he's carrying the colours of his team Ethics, which has so often dominated this in various guises under the guide of Patrick Lefevre, but they've had a lousy season as a team this year. Now he's gone again. He's taken advantage, grits his teeth. This is the Tomica of old here, but they've nailed him back, and Stannard's going to take up the pace.
Now this might be the good one. They need to respond to these attacks immediately, straight over the top. Boasson-Hagen knows he's got the fastest sprint in this group of riders who remain after this long Paris-Roubaix, but he's got to be there if he wants to win the race. Around the corner, he's lost 10-15 bike lengths. You've got to nail it down at a moment like this. At the end of a race like Paris-Roubaix, you give somebody 10 bicycle lengths, you can't pull it back.
Into the 3 kilometres to go here. Now Ian Stannard is the man setting the pace for Sky. And Boasson-Hagen has desisted, he's swung off. Tom Bonan has had to go back and do it for himself again. What a champion, a world champion he has been. Sepp van Mark marks him. Boasson-Hagen, never placed in this event, grits his teeth again. And still at the back is Matthew Hayman. As we come together, Bonan goes. Is there? Has there been a Paris-Roubaix like this in recent years? I've never seen it.
I've never seen so many attacks to Tom Boonen. He's got the ability to win the sprint, but he's gone straight over the top. But this is real courage. This is audacity at its highest in a race like Paris-Roubaix. He could have waited and tried to save it for the final sprint of the day, but they haven't nailed him back just yet. He looks over his shoulders. He knows this could be the last time. Matty Hayman's going after him now.
Well, Matty Hayman, the Australian, is streaking across the gap here. He's catching up with Tom Boonen. Yeah, Bosenhagen looks cooked at the moment. He can't react, and Hayman's gone over the top of Tomica. 38 seconds back to anybody that matters. This is the leading group of 5. From one of this group will be the winner. 2 kilometres to go. Hayman on the attack.
Phil, their legs are all buckling at the moment. I saw Edvald Bosenhagen in the red jersey try to get out of the saddle, and then he sat back down again. But look at this, Matty Hayman is opening up a gap. Tom Boonen has got to find all the courage that he's had over these many years, and he's dragging himself back to that slipstream where they've got a slight advantage over everybody else. It's Stannard trying to nail it back. This could be the decisive moment.
As we head towards the last little stretch of cobblestones, which are really, as Paul has called them, ceremonial, Tom Boonen is now back with Matthew Hayman. Boonen looking for win number 5 in the outright record of Paris-Roubaix. Matthew Hayman win number 1, which will be simply extraordinary. But are the others going to come back? There's a gap there at 1.2 to go. Here's the last cobbles.
I saw Stannard just put his head down as if to say, I've got no more, there's nothing left in here. This is the section of cobblestones as Charles Krupeland, the winner of Paris-Roubaix in 1912 and 1914. They are pretty much ceremonial. A little bit of grass growing up through the middle there, but the gap's nothing, Phil. It's hardly anything at all, and Sepp van Mark has left these 2. He's trying to get across the gap to the 2 leaders.
5 wonderful bike riders who've laid all of their strength on the cobblestones of Paris-Roubaix today. There can only be one winner, and they're about to head into the stadium, an Australian and a Belgian. As I say, the Belgian looking to be the finest ever exponent of this incredible event. And get the applause of the crowd first. Three riders are together on the stadium. Sepp van Mark, only ever finishing second in this event, wants the victory more than most, I think. He's now on them. Now we go round to the bell. 1 lap of the track. Belgium versus Australia. Bosenhagen and Stannard inside the last lap. It could be a world championship on the track. We are 5 riders for the sprint.
And they're going right up the banking. Matty Hayman comes down, looks for the wheel there of Tom Boonen, but as they line themselves up, Boonen is in the first position. There's still a long way to go. I
tell you, as they come into the last 200 metres now, Matthew Hayman has gone. Boonen wants a little bit of respite, but over the top comes Sepp van Mark. As they come round the banking to line up, Stannard is coming on the upper banking. I never thought I'd commentate on a track race, but as they come up towards the line now, Matthew Hayman is finding the sprint of his life. And he's won it. I don't believe it. Australia will go berserk. Matthew Hayman has won Paris-Roubaix, only the 2nd Australian ever. Unbelievable.
Well, when you look at the guys he was up against, Phil, that was perfectly timed. It was incredible as we look at Teremutins on the line here. That was an amazing move there by Matty Hayman. He had Tom Boonen on his wheels, Sepp van Mark, 2 great sprinters when it comes down to the line. But you know, this has been, we always said this was going to be a very special day. And guess what? It has been.
It wasn't a sprint, it was a survival of the one man left standing. And look at this. He doesn't believe it. He does not believe it. Somebody tell me it's true. Unbelievable. And there's nobody deserves it more than Matty Hayman. Now the realisation. He's in a total daze.
He cannot believe what he's just done, Phil, because that is such a special day. There's a man who was hoping to win, Peter Sagan, on the far side of the velodrome now.
Well, let's see if Peter Sagan can at least take out the sprint from the group. He's chased all day, more or less, since the Forest of Arenberg. The average speed of the race, 43.57. It was fast, slowed a little bit towards the end. Being led around the roads here by Bert de Backer. Sagan in third place. Might show us what might have been Sinkeldam coming up on the outside there. Sagan just waiting, looking as nonchalant as he always does. He may be not too worried now. Luke Rowe is on his shoulder as the sprint opens from the top of the course there. But this is going to be Adrien Petit, I think, who's just made the move. And that's a good finish by Adrien Petit. I don't think Sagan's heart was in the finish there today. There is the famous old velodrome. There's a new one now for professional cycling, but Paris-Roubaix will always finish on this one.
Well, Matty Hayman, Phil, I have to say, got that all right. Look at this one more time.
But look at the face on Bonan on the left. So near, yet so far. Oh, the pain, you can feel it.
Well, Matt Hayman was the man who took the responsibility there of leading out, and you know, it's an awful long way from that final corner on this 500-metre cement track, and he won that by a good length. But I think everybody was at the end of their tether there when he came over the last few kilometres, and that look there to
he doesn't know it.
His helpers, he wasn't even sure whether he won the race. I mean, it's a look of I don't believe it.
I for Roubaix 5 weeks ago and missed all the racing. I raced the race in Spain last week.
Oui, je me suis cassé le radius il y a 5 semaines et puis je suis revenu là à peine ce mois-ci, c'est juste incroyable.
This is my favourite race. This is a race I dream of every year. And this year I didn't even dare to dream. For the last 5 years I've been really nervous in this race, and today I was just riding, just enjoying. I made the breakaway, but I only went once. So I really saved my legs there, and then I saved all day. And in the final, I could tell that the other guys were also pretty tired, and we raced really hard the last 5K with attacks, and I just played the game, and I was lucky.
Alors je vais essayer de vous redire tout ce qu'il a dit, c'est que c'est ma course préférée. D'habitude je suis nerveux, et c'est vrai que j'étais nerveux avant cette course, et puis aujourd'hui j'étais juste bien, j'étais relax, j'étais costaud, j'ai pris l'échappée ce matin, on a roulé, j'étais avec des gars qui étaient très forts, et puis j'ai essayé d'attaquer, puis finalement j'ai gagné. As you said, you were in the breakaway, just amazing, you were in the front all day long. Vous avez pris l'échappée, vous étiez devant toute la journée. What did you think when you went in the breakaway? Qu'est-ce que vous avez pensé dans l'échappée?
This is one of the very few races at this level, a monument where you can do good things from the breakaway. So I knew if I was there, I just needed to take it easy, eat, and really wait for the final. And I was waiting for the big guys to come, and thinking that would be Fabian and Sagan and maybe my teammate Jens Kökele. And I was just saving, staying out of trouble, saving. And then when they came, I guess the guys had to do a lot of work to catch us, because I realised after the first few times, I think probably the hardest section for me today was Mollin-Pavel. And after that, I knew I was in the final.
Ouais, c'est vrai que c'est peut-être la seule grande course où de prendre l'échappée, ben ça peut aller au bout, et c'est ce que je me suis dit. Et puis c'est vrai que quand les cadors, quand les costauds sont revenus, j'ai dit à mes équipiers faut qu'on roule, et je savais que Mollin-Pavel serait énorme. Et là, Luke Rowe qui vient féliciter Matthew. Thanks a lot and congratulations. Merci beaucoup et bravo.
Yes, Matthew Hayman there. Well, he was on the Sky team for 4 years. He moved across to Orica Green Edge in 2014, and now he's given them victory in Paris-Roubaix. That marries up with the classic victories in Liège-Bastogne-Liège and Milan-San Remo, but not by Matthew Hayman. This was his moment. He could not believe he had done it, that's for sure, as we all probably felt the same way. But he is a rider who can turn out the results. That's only the 8th win of his professional career, which, believe it or not, is now in his 17th season as a pro. And he'll be 38 years of age later this month, April the 20th to be exact. It's a big moment for Fabian Cancellara as well. This rider's managing to smile. He knows all about Paris-Roubaix, how it can turn back and bite you. Today he fell. It was his own volition when he fell, and the result, he was out of the hunt for a 4th victory, which would have equalled the records of Tom Bonen and Roger de Vlaming. But even so, he rides high on the banking to say farewell to the crowd of Roubaix. Spartacus, as we've come to know him, has been an absolute champion. So, as Cancellara, all smiles. He knows the problems with this sport, especially on Paris-Roubaix. You can look great one day and be pretty average the next. He certainly wasn't that, but he knows how things can go wrong so quickly when they always seem to be going right. At the results, it's provisional of course, but there's no reason to think it won't stay like this. Matthew Hayman of Australia, and the second Australian to win this event. Stuart O'Grady was the previous Australian back in 2007. Tom Bonen, second place for him. Ian Stannard denied the 5 victories. Ian Stannard joins the greats of Great Britain, which are Roger Hammond and Barry Hoban, with a 3rd place finish. Sepp van Mark, 4th again, I'm afraid for him. He has finished 2nd. Bosenhagen gets his best finish there with 5th place. It's been an extraordinary race, as Cancellara is still being feted here in the stadium as if he had been the winner today. Perhaps if they hadn't have fallen, losing Luke Grove for a short while, who knows, it might have been a different result. But I guess on this particular day, you could use that and analyse many such occasions out on the road today. If it hadn't happened, what would the answer have been? Ian Stannard takes 3rd place, and on the far left, by the way, you just catch a glimpse of Bernardino, French winner of this event, 5-time winner of the Tour de France. The team is all smiles. They must be absolutely astonished, but wait till they see this played back on video, because, and there is the man in charge of the team, Shane Bannon, as well. As we go back out on stage, Tom Bonen did the ride of his life today. He didn't win, but he still made this race. Tom Bonen has a fantastic record in this event, even if today it's not to be a winner's event for him. Well, we're only just over the borders from Belgium. I think that's significant because a lot of the fans here are from Belgium. And even in the restaurant last night, a lot of the French were speaking the Flemish language in the restaurant. So Bonen now has 4 wins, 2 seconds and a 3rd in this event.
Et mesdames et messieurs, le moment est venu maintenant d'accueillir comme il se doit le vainqueur de l'édition 2016 de Paris-Roubaix.
What did you say, Joe? And here he comes at the moment. No smiles because he didn't believe he'd won this race. You think he hadn't seen enough of these two all day because they've been locked together for the whole ride. But this man, using his sheer guile and guts at the end, got the victory for Orica Green Edge in Australia. Matthew Hayman, only the 2nd Australian to win, and in a couple of weeks' time he'll be 38 years of age.
L'enfer du Nord, cette édition 2016 qui lui aura souri à merveille.
Well, I must confess, he looks pretty fresh up there, but those legs must be crying out with pain.
Et des sports et de la vie associative du Conseil régional Hauts-de-France. On retrouve également sur le podium protocolaire les félicitations de Miss France 2016.
This was a true bike race. They hit each other every inch of the way. No lucky winner in Paris-Roubaix. It's the way it works out. Best man wins, and today Matthew Hayman finished off what the others started.
Félicité par monsieur le maire de Roubaix, monsieur Guillaume Delbar. Voilà le pavé symbolique, mesdames et messieurs, l'ovation du public, le triomphe.
And here it comes, the piece of pavé. This is what it's all about. You have to reinforce your trophy cupboard now to hold this one up. Only his 8th win of his career, a career which has lasted 16 years.
257 km entre Compiègne et Roubaix. Cet homme était présent à l'avant depuis ce matin. Il est en tête depuis 200 km. L'ovation, s'il vous plaît, pour le podium. Matthew Hayman, Tom Bonnen et Jan Stannard.
So they call for one final applause for the podium. Matthew Hayman, Tom Bonnen, Ian Stannard. Very, very international lineup.
Matthew Hayman, Tom Bonnen, Jan Stannard.
Now, will this mean that Tom Bonnen will be with us again next year, because he hasn't made his mind up to retire yet and won't tell anybody? He still has a chance of that record, and the way he rode today, I'd think twice about retiring, if indeed he's even thinking of retiring.
La grande photo de cette édition 2016 de Paris-Roubaix et le public, le vélodrome qui était en fusion cet après-midi pour ces trois champions. Les applaudissements, une nouvelle fois pour Matthew Hayman.
257 kilometers under those wheels.